Church, we are now about 3 weeks into our Salt and Light series. And I want to remind you once again why we are spending time here. This series is a call back to purpose, back to joy, back to passion, back to remembering who we are. Because the longer we live in this world, the easier it becomes to drift into spiritual autopilot. We get busy, we get distracted, we get tired, calendars fill up, responsibilities multiply, bills need paying, kids need attention, work demands more, news headlines scream louder, and before long, we can find ourselves simply going through the motions, showing up without shining, attending without influencing, existing without truly living on mission. But Jesus never intended his followers to be spiritual spectators, did he? He intended us to be a visible, vibrant presence in the world. And so, every week in this series, we are returning to the words of Jesus and asking what it looks like to live with intentionality, to live with influence, and to live with joy as we go about our daily lives. In the first sermon, we learned that disciple making is not merely an event, it is a lifestyle. It is something that happens around the kitchen table and coffee shops and in offices and neighborhoods, on ball fields and back porches. In the second sermon, we learned that salt preserves what is good, adds flavor to the world around it, and creates thirst for something greater. But today we turn to the second image Jesus gives us. You are the light of the world. And church, that statement is breathtaking when you think about it, because Jesus had used those very same words already to describe himself. In John 8:12, Jesus declared, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Think about that for a moment. The one who illuminated creation, the one who shattered the darkness of sin, the one who stepped into a broken world bringing truth, hope, grace, and redemption, that light now looks at his followers and says, "You are the light of the world." Not because the light originates in us, not because we are naturally radiant, not because we possess some special goodness apart from him, but because his light shines through us. The moon does not generate light. It reflects light. Its beauty is borrowed. Its brightness is received. And neither do we generate spiritual light on our own. Left to ourselves, we stumble around in darkness just like everyone else. But when Christ shines upon us, when his Spirit transforms us, when his grace fills our lives, we begin reflecting his character to the world around us. We reflect his love. We reflect his truth. We reflect his compassion. We reflect his holiness. We reflect Christ. But before we go further, let me give you this week's reminder of joy. One of the most beautiful truths of Christianity is that darkness never gets the last word. Never. From Genesis to Revelation, God is always moving toward light. Creation begins with light. The incarnation brings light. The resurrection bursts forth with light. The New Jerusalem needs no sun because the Lamb himself is its light. Church, we are on the winning side of history. The darkness may be loud, but it is temporary. The light of Christ is eternal. And when we remember that we are already victors, that the end is already written, that God has already won, that will put courage in our hearts, that will put hope in our souls, that will put joy on our faces. Listen again to the words in Matthew 5. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Jesus immediately tells us something important. Light is visible. That is the point. Light was never designed to stay concealed. Its very nature is to push back darkness and make itself known. In the ancient world, a city built on a hillside could be seen from miles away. As travelers made their way through the darkness, the lamps burning in the city became a guide, a comfort, and a promise that they were not alone. That is the image Jesus chooses for his followers. Not hidden away, not tucked in a corner, visible, intentional, present. And then Jesus continues by talking about a lamp. Now, nobody lights a lamp and immediately covers it with a basket. Nobody spends the effort to create light only to hide it from view. The lamp is lifted high so everyone in the house can benefit from its glow. Light exists to be seen. And Christians are called to live visible lives, not performative lives, visible lives. There is a difference. Jesus is not calling us to spiritual showmanship. He is not telling us to draw attention to ourselves, to parade our righteousness, or to turn faith into performance. In fact, later on in the Sermon on the Mount, he specifically warns against this kind of behavior. Instead, he's calling us to authentic faithfulness. A life so consistently shaped by the presence of Christ that people notice something different. A life marked by kindness, compassion, integrity, and hope. A life that quietly but unmistakably points beyond itself to Jesus. Not because we are trying to be noticed, but because the light of Christ shining through us is too bright to ignore. A life so transformed by his presence that others cannot help but notice. One of the greatest misconceptions Christians sometimes have is believing that influence only belongs to those with platforms. The preacher, the missionary, the author, the podcast host, the celebrity Christian. But Jesus never said the light belonged only to a few. He said it belongs to all of his followers. The teacher has light. The plumber has light. The retiree has light. The student has light. The single parent has light. The accountant has light. The mechanic has light. The child sitting in these pews has light. Every believer carries the presence of Christ into places many preachers will never go. Your workplace is a mission field. Your classroom is a mission field. Your neighborhood is a mission field. And sometimes the brightest witness is not a sermon, it is a faithful presence. I once heard a story about a woman named Margaret. She worked at the same hospital for nearly 30 years. She was not a doctor. She was not an administrator. She cleaned rooms. That was her job. Day after day, she emptied trash cans, swept floors, sanitized equipment, and made beds. Nothing glamorous, nothing fancy. But every patient received a smile. Every family received kindness. Every grieving spouse received compassion. When a patient was afraid, she prayed quietly for them. When families were exhausted, she encouraged them. When nurses were overwhelmed, she helped them. Years later, after she retired, dozens of former coworkers attended her retirement celebration. And one nurse stood up and said, "Margaret made this place brighter." Church, that is light. Not a spotlight, a lamp, steady, faithful, consistent, and over time it illuminated an entire workplace. Sometimes we underestimate the power of our presence. We think influence happens through dramatic moments, big speeches, huge events, massive decisions. And certainly God can work through those things, but more often than not, transformation happens through ordinary faithfulness. Showing up, being kind, listening well, serving consistently, encouraging repeatedly, remaining faithful when no one is watching. The kingdom grows through countless ordinary moments illuminated by Christ. This is why Paul tells believers in Philippians 2 to shine like stars in the sky. Notice he does not say shine like fireworks. Fireworks are impressive. They are loud. They attract attention. But guess what? They disappear almost immediately. Stars are different. They're steady. They're reliable. They're consistent. Night after night they remain. And Christians are called to be stars, not fireworks, not occasional bursts of faithfulness, not temporary flashes of enthusiasm. Consistent light, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. And church, our world desperately needs that because people are tired, not just physically tired, though many are. They are emotionally exhausted, spiritually drained. Many carry burdens no one can see. They are searching for meaning, searching for connection, and wondering if anyone truly notices their pain. They have information at their fingertips, but little wisdom for their hearts. They have hundreds of online connections, but few genuine relationships. They have entertainment available 24 hours a day, but still struggle to find lasting joy. And into that darkness, Jesus sends his people, not as judges standing at a distance, not as critics shouting from the sidelines, but as lights, as living reminders that Christ has not abandoned the world, as people who embody grace, kindness, and hope. Jesus does not call us merely to point toward the light. He calls us to carry it, to walk into lonely places, hurting places, broken places, and dark places with the presence of Christ. Not with condemnation, with light. Not with arrogance, with grace. Not merely with answers, with presence. Think about Jesus. Before he preached many sermons, he simply showed up. Right? He sat at tables with tax collectors and sinners. He walked dusty roads with fishermen. He attended weddings. He visited homes. He stopped for blind beggars along the roadside. He listened to hurting people whose names most of society had forgotten. He wept at the tomb of Lazarus. He touched lepers nobody else would touch. He made time for children when his own disciples thought they were interruptions. Again and again, Jesus demonstrated that presence is powerful. Sometimes his miracle changed lives. Sometimes his teaching changed lives. But often his willingness to be present changed lives. People felt seen, known, valued, loved. And in a world where so many people feel invisible, that kind of presence still shines brightly today. Sometimes the most Christ-like thing you can do is simply be there. Sit with someone in a hospital room. Call a friend who is struggling. Visit a neighbor. Listen to a grieving family. Share a meal with someone who is lonely. You do not have to solve every problem. You do not have to provide every answer. You do not have to carry the weight of fixing every broken thing in someone's life. That is God's job, amen? Your calling is much simpler. Be present, be available, be attentive, be compassionate, and trust that God can do extraordinary things through ordinary faithfulness. Sometimes the brightest light in a dark moment is simply a follower of Jesus willing to walk into a room and stay there. You simply need to carry the presence of Jesus into the room. Now, that is one reason I keep encouraging our 2 meetups a month challenge. Some of you have already begun, others are still considering it, but church, I genuinely believe that relationships are one of the primary ways God shines his light. Invite someone for coffee. I hear there's a new coffee shop opening soon that could definitely use some light and some presence. Invite someone for lunch. Invite a family over for dessert, go for a walk, share life, listen to stories, build friendships, because light spreads through relationships. And some of the greatest disciple-making opportunities begin with simple conversations, not complicated, not expensive, just intentional. Remember what we said earlier in this series, the mission is not separate from life. The mission is life. Now let me introduce a little tension here. Light reveals things. That is wonderful, right? Yeah, and can be uncomfortable because darkness can hide things. Light exposes them. And sometimes that is why people resist the light. Jesus says in John 3:19, light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light. The reality is that shining for Christ will not always make you popular. Sometimes your integrity will make other people feel uncomfortable. Sometimes your kindness will seem very unusual. Sometimes your convictions will stand out. Sometimes your refusal to participate in gossip, dishonesty, cruelty, that will make you different. And that is okay. That is okay because light is not called to blend in with darkness. It is called to shine. Church, hear me. Our goal is not to become darker so the darkness feels comfortable. Our goal is not to hide the light so nobody notices. Our goal is not to apologize for following Jesus. Our goal is to shine with grace, shine with truth, shine with humility, with compassion, with courage, and most of all, shine with joy. Because the darker the room becomes, the more valuable the light becomes. And eventually Jesus gives us the purpose behind all of this. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and what? Glorify your Father in heaven. Notice where Jesus directs our attention. Not to ourselves, not to our accomplishments, not to our reputation, not to our church attendance or our talents or our achievements. The destination of the light is always the Father. The purpose of light is not self-promotion, it is God promotion. And that is a critical distinction, because there is a temptation in every generation to turn faith into performance, to seek applause instead of impact, to crave recognition instead of faithfulness. But Jesus says the goal is something entirely different. We shine so that people see God more clearly. We serve so that people experience His love. We forgive so that people glimpse His grace. We endure hardships so that people witness His faithfulness. The spotlight always, always, always moves beyond us and lands on Him. And when that happens, something beautiful occurs. People begin connecting the character they see in the believers with the God those believers serve. They see patience and wonder about the source. They see generosity and ask, who motivates that? They see compassion and integrity and mercy and joy, and they begin to realize that something greater is at work here. They begin to think, God must be good. God must be real. God must be changing lives. Church, we are not the message Jesus is. We are not the destination He is. We are simply mirrors reflecting His glory and lamps carrying His light into dark places. The spotlight is always on Him, never on us. So this week I want to challenge you. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Where has God placed me? Who has God placed around me? And how can I shine there? At work, at school, at home, at the coffee shop, at the restaurant, at the ball field, at the family gathering. Wherever God has planted you, shine there, not dramatically, faithfully, not occasionally, consistently, not for your glory, for His. Because, church, the world does not need more darkness. It does not need more outrage. It does not need more cynicism. It has plenty and plenty of that. It needs light. And Jesus says that light is you. You are the light of the world. So shine with kindness, shine with grace, shine with truth, shine with hope, and let the light of Christ illuminate every room you enter. Because somewhere in the darkness, someone is looking for a light to follow. Be that light. Here are your 3 questions. Be blessed and be a blessing to others.